21. My name is Lisa Minton, and I will be presenting the cases to the board for further review in today's public hearing. We're convened here at the Sonny West Conference Center in the Howard Office Building located at 700 2nd Avenue South. For these public hearings, the board reviews the correspondence submitted in support of and opposition to these cases. The board also reviews correspondence and recommendations from other government agencies in preparation for the hearings. In today's hearings, staff will present the site plans, maps, photographs, and other documents that comprise the case record. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the appellant will present his or her case to the board. After the appellant's presentation, if anyone is here wishing to speak in support of the appeal, they may do so. If any opposition is present, the board will then hear from those parties. After the opposition presents its testimony, the appellant will have a period for rebuttal. According to the BZA rules, the appellant has 5 minutes for presentation if no opposition is present. In contested cases, the BZA rules allow 10 minutes for each side to present testimony. Should the appellant wish to provide rebuttal testimony, the appellant should reserve some portion of the allotted 10 minutes. At the conclusion of each hearing, the board will deliberate and then vote on that case. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases under the provisions of the Metro Zoning Code, Section 1740-180. All section numbers that we refer to come from the Metro Zoning Code, which applies to the entire jurisdiction of the metropolitan government. The Zoning Code was adopted by the Metro Council and became effective on January 1st, 1998. I will introduce the entire Zoning Code and make it part of today's record. The Metro Code requires a record of these proceedings. Because BZA meetings are recorded for the Metro Nashville network, it is imperative that anyone addressing the board come forward to the podium and speak into the microphone. All speakers should identify themselves by name and address and then make their desired presentations. The Metro Code requires 4 members of our 7-member board to establish quorum. The code also requires at least 4 affirmative votes to grant an appeal. In the event that 5 or more members are present, but that appeal fails to receive 4 affirmative votes, the case will remain on the board's agenda for the next 30 days. Applications that fail to receive 4 affirmative votes within 30 days of the public hearing shall be deemed denied by operation of law. Pursuant to board rules, an aggrieved party may appeal board decisions to the Chancery or Circuit Court within 60 days of the entry of the BZA order. Additionally, per the BZA rules, an aggrieved party may file a motion for rehearing by the BZA within 60 days of the original hearing date. After that time elapses, the board's decision becomes final and no further action can be taken. If your appeal is granted, you're required to obtain a permit for which you applied. A permit must be obtained within 2 years for the board approval to remain valid. It should also be noted that if false or misleading testimony is presented to the board, any board approval could be revoked at a later date by means of show cause hearing before the BZA. Acting Chairman Karpanek, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all appellants have been notified by certified mail, and all legal notice requirements have been fulfilled.
Thank you.
I do have a preliminary announcement regarding cases that are being deferred. Case 2021-115, located at 924 8th Avenue South, has been deferred to the September 16th meeting. And case 2021-119, located at 1022 43rd Avenue North, has also been deferred to the September 16th meeting. The board utilizes a consent agenda for its meetings. One board member reviews the record for each case prior to the hearing and identifies those cases which meet the criteria for the requested action by the appellant. If the reviewing board member determines that testimony in the case would not alter the material facts in any substantial way, the case is recommended to the board for approval. The following items are proposed for the consent agenda on today's docket. If any opposition is present for any of these cases, it will be removed from the consent agenda and heard in its original order on today's docket. Case 2021-083, located at 411 West Due West, seeking a special exception to construct a 30 by 30 pavilion for an existing church. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 2021-083? Seeing none, Next case, case 2021-118, located at 1805 through 1815 Church Street, seeking a special exception to exceed the maximum height at the setback line to construct a mixed-use building. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 2021-118? Seeing none. Next case, case 2021-123, located at 1123 Glenview Drive. They're seeking a variance from fence restrictions within an RS5 district in order to maintain a current fence within a right-of-way. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 2021-123? Seeing none.
Okay, do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
I make motion that we approve.
Second it.
Second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand. Okay, 4 in favor, I see none opposed, motion passes.
If your case was passed on the consent agenda, you're welcome to leave at this time, and the orders will be signed the beginning of next week. Thank you. Absent any other announcements, we're ready to proceed with the cases to be heard on today's docket. The first case to be heard today is case 2021-108, located at 0 Hobson Pike, seeking a variance from the 40-foot street setback requirements within the RM6 zoning district. The appellant is wanting to construct a multifamily development and is requesting a 20-foot street setback. Here's an overview of the parcel zoning, an aerial view of the property, site plan of the proposed development showing the required 40-foot setback and the requested 20-foot setback, existing conditions of the site, and the surrounding area. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 2021-108? Seeing opposition is present, the appellant will have 5 minutes at this point to introduce yourself, address, and your case, and then after your testimony, the opposition may speak.
Hi, my name is Maria Riad. I'm here for 0 Hobson Pike. Currently,
Could you give us your address, please?
Oh,
Your address.
oh, my address, 9753 Concord Pass, Brentwood, Tennessee. Sorry. What we're requesting is a variance from a 40-foot street setback to a 20-foot street setback. This lot is currently 5 acres, but what's usable is only 20%. So at this time, we're trying to maximize what of it we can, because out of that five acres, we can only use 1 acre due to TVA lines being in the back portion of the lot. We've already requested a similar setback from the TVA, and they've already approved it on a different portion of the property. And if we were not to get this setback, we would have to lower the number about 25% of what or 20% of what can be built right now. Instead of 20 lots, it would go down to 15 in order to of what we can do. That's
Okay.
all I have to
Does
say
anyone
about
have questions for the applicant?
The TVA lines, were they were there before you bought the property?
Yes.
They've been there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions? I guess we'll call up the opposition now. Okay. You can take a seat, ma'am, and
Okay.
we'll call you back up after he's done.
Good afternoon. My name is Larry Price. I reside at 100 Cambridge Close, Antioch, Tennessee, 37013. I represent the Friends of District 33, a local group of homeowners that monitor and keep track of developments in the southeast quadrant of Davidson County. The variance being requested would allow 13 townhomes fronting Hobson Pike to have front setbacks removed from 40 feet to 20 feet. That is more than 50% of the total development. Also, if you back up a couple of slides, you will note that this property is directly across from JFK Middle School. The speed limit on that section of Hobson Pike during non-school hours is 45 miles an hour. Reducing that setback creates some safety concerns. Also, I see no other similar setbacks driving in that section of Hobson County, or Hobson Road in Davidson County. The property was sold at a drastically reduced price to begin with, and the current owners should have done their due diligence in terms of the pre-existing power lines. I see no hardship in maintaining a 20-foot setback, although it could reduce the total number of units. It would still generate a handsome profit on the purchase price of the total 5.66 acres. So on behalf of the Friends of District 33, we are in opposition to this variance to the existing setback rules.
I believe one of the letters in our packet noted some concerns about water runoff and some stormwater concerns. Do you have any kind of, do you know anything about that, or can you speak to that at all?
That area, when you start to add significant numbers of rooftops and pavement, always create concerns about stormwater. What the specific plans that the current owner and the builder would have, that would be pursuant to Metro codes and how they would handle stormwater.
Yeah, but you don't have any specific things that, there are some specific concerns noted in some of those letters, but you don't.
I'm not aware of
Okay.
any specific concerns at that property.
Okay, thank you.
And could you remind us of the homeowner group that you represent and how many members?
It's Friends of District 33. And so the primary representative for that group is John Stern, Tawana Chick, and Therese Broomfield Gooch. So I am a member of the group.
Okay, is it a large group?
Right now we are a group of about 8 to 10 people, and we meet regularly, and we work closely with district council people in the Southeast District, not just District 33.
Any additional questions?
Would it be possible to, the proposed plan, would you put that back up on the screen? Thank you, I can see it this way. Appreciate it.
If the appellant would like to come forward with rebuttal.
The stormwater issue, I don't think, there's not really a way to know, because until this gets approved or not, we won't be able to run any utilities to it. And so I'm sure whatever gets approved and whatever we can put on there, proper measures would be taken to ensure that there's no ill side effects to anyone around. I think that's all I have to add to that. I don't know if anyone has any questions for me. In terms of, he was saying that it would turn an appropriate profit. Running utilities and stormwater and electrical to it is something that'll be really expensive, and if it's not done for enough units, then it might not be something that we're able to do. We're not really a big company. We're small, just like my father. So it's not like we have easy access to these sort of resources. So it will be done more costly to us than maybe like a bigger company would be able to do.
Okay, any additional questions?
I do. Can you articulate for me what the actual hardship, other than not being able to
So
build?
any of that, all that white space is where we cannot use. So the whole lot is 5 acres. We can only build on about an acre of it, and even that part of it, because of rules regarding how big the units can be, how much parking we can have, it decreases. That's ideal situation is if we could do that, just because we've already spent a lot of money into getting it rezoned and getting it approved. We bought it, when we bought it, it was to have it rezoned, and so at that point, we weren't sure how far the easements were going to be, because we couldn't really decide that until we got it rezoned. So that was why there wasn't, we weren't completely over what could and couldn't, and until now we can't, because it's changed so much since we've purchased it.
Okay. But the power lines were there when you bought it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Has the easement changed since you bought it? Because you say...
I'm not aware of that. That's not something I know.
Okay. Okay. Have you done any, have you done geotechnical work at all, or had any kind of reports on that for this area?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions? Do you have anything to add?
No.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing and we'll open it up for the board to discuss.
Well, I will say I'm having a hard time seeing a hardship that wasn't self-imposed if they bought the lot as one zoning and they changed to another zoning. Even if that increased the easement, that seems kind of self-imposed to me, and they can build, 74% of the units, 16 of the 23, without setback changing. I also have concern. I know one of the letters from a former board BZA member said had some concerns about stormwater and made mention of a cedar glade. And just the reason I asked about geotech is anytime you see a lot of cedar trees, that could be problematic soils. And just to think, the thought of adding additional units to the site could be concerning there. I mean, I know that's not completely within our purview, but that's just one factor that I was thinking about if this is going to allow an increase in units in my lot.
I agree with Mr. Newton's sort of assessment. I sort of struggled with this one, and several years ago, it's been a long time, but my brother actually used to live in a neighborhood right off of Hobson Pike, and it's very suburban. Those setbacks are most of the houses are just very far off the road because it's like a state highway. It leads right to the state park that's sort of in between there and Mount Juliet. And so this to me feels more of an urban kind of thing, and this is sort of in a suburban area, and I agree that I think it's sort of self-imposed, and it seems like they can still get most of their units and accomplish what they want without coming to us. So I didn't really see a hardship here.
Okay, do we have any more discussion or motion?
Okay, I'll be the bad guy this time. I make a motion that we deny the request.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, raise their hand. Okay, we have 4 in favor. I see none opposed, so the motion passes.
Next case is case 2021-110, located at 516 Stevenson Street, seeking a variance from the 8,000 square foot minimum lot size requirements within an R8 district. They're seeking to construct 2 single-family residences. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 2021-110?
I have a concern.
Opposition, you may speak when we get to that point, okay. I'll go through the slides, and then the appellant may come forward and state their name, address, and present their case. Here's an overview of the area, showing the parcel highlighted in pink on there, showing the current zoning. Like I said, it's R8. Surrounding area, current conditions. Here's the proposed site plan. The existing site and the surrounding area. The appellant would like to come forward at this point.
Hello, my name is Justin Stockdale. My company is JVK Development. I live at 66 Twin Street, which is adjoining with Stevenson Street, about 500 feet away from the subject property. I'm personally invested in the development of my neighborhood. I do part-time development on kind of as a side project. I take one project on at a time. In my neighborhood, I like checking on the projects before and after work, walking to it. And one of my other projects is actually what led to this project. I'm currently developing the Summit Street property, which is, if you were looking at my proposed site plan, it's to the right of that, up that concrete driveway. It's the area in the back. I am building 4 houses on Summit Street, and when I submitted my project on Summit Street, I split the underlying lot line to make 2 HPRs and recreating the 2 original parcels. During my planning period of the Summit Street project, I came into contact with Mr. Sampson, who originally owned 516 Stevenson. His existing driveway was in the public right-of-way where Summit Street is currently being built. So when we were talking over the project and logistics, he indicated he was willing to sell the property, and I decided to buy it just to, for ease of access and to not create any issues with a potential new buyer. My original plan was to expand the 516 Stevenson Street property by adding an additional 4 feet on the rear. However, once I split the underlying lot line on Summit Street, I could not deed any further land over to the 516, and thus is where I'm finding my hardship. With my hands tied, my engineer has led me to the BZA process, as he suggested this would be the best route to have Nashville consider my proposal. When outlining a rough plan, I wanted to consider any variables that would make this project an overall improvement to my neighborhood, and the neighborhood. The original house was run down, and the footprint was and ran all the way to the lot lines, and the footprint was 1,480 square feet. So therefore, I'm trying to minimize my proposed footprint and impervious area by attaching the 2 duplexes as shown on the site plan. The proposed site plan has a smaller dimension facing Stevenson Street than the original house did. And therefore, I believe that it's going to actually create a more attractive view from Stevenson Street and the corner. By backloading the garages and to utilize the new Summit Street, again, I think creates a better product for the neighborhood. This type of development would be very consistent with the neighborhood, as similar projects are very common on adjoining streets, such as Stevenson, Twin, Eastboro, East Bend, Columbia, and Crowley. I do care deeply about my neighborhood that I live in, and when I take on the projects, I try to address any concerns that the adjoining neighbors may have, and last thing I want to do is inconvenience my neighbors. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions for the applicant?
So do you own on this screen, what's on the screen here, the parcel just immediately to the right on Summit Street as well? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you said you tried, what was the reason why you couldn't deed over the land from that? Yeah. Is that what you were saying? You tried to do that, but you couldn't do it?
Yeah, from what I understand, I don't know the specific zonings. I'm going off the advice of the engineers I employed. There was an underlying lot line on the larger parcel of Summit Street. So when I split that lot line and recreated the 2 original parcels, I was no longer allowed to do a second adjustment to those lot lines, is what I was told.
Okay, any other questions? We'll call the opposition up now. You have about 3 minutes, 39 seconds of rebuttal.
Okay, hello, my name is Frank Moody. I own 518 Stevenson Street. My concern here is really, I don't know if you can tell it from the photograph above or if you have a plan for what is on Summit Street. The lot lines of the parcels, of these parcels, 516, 518, 520, and 522, seem to go back at an angle. But the problem with that is nobody has lived like that ever, to my knowledge. So that actually, as proposed on this sheet, if built, that makes that property of 516 would then cut over into my property on the end about 13 feet, and then likewise, it would cut into a storage shed to the owner of 516, which would make his property cut into a fence and a driveway, the owner of 522.
Can you show us on this where you live in relation to what's in pink?
Okay, I live right up the one directly above that is the one that I live on right there. Okay.
I have to say I'm not following when you're talking about cutting into the shed. That's happening on...
Okay, that's directly, that little gray square right above, that's that right there. Okay.
But they're building below your...
Yeah, they're building below mine, which is fine. I'm just saying, and to be honest with you, I really have no problem with them putting multiple units there. That doesn't bother me at all. I'm simply bringing up a concern that if those partial lines are followed exactly, rather than the fence as it is, in my opinion, it creates a little bit of a hardship for myself and for my neighbors, just because that's not how we've lived on these properties heretofore. In other words, the driveway to the parcel that's above me there, it would cut into that driveway and into the storage shed that he uses, because now everything would be slanting back at an angle rather than slanting directly back.
So
Go ahead.
is there an existing fence between your properties at all? Is there anything denoting kind of, I mean, I know
There is an existing fence, yes, sir. It's a small wire fence, but it is an
Okay.
existing fence.
and so it's kind of crossing this line that you see on the screen, is that right?
That would be correct,
Okay.
yes.
Gotcha.
I would think he would be required to, the applicant would be required to have a survey done before he builds. So that would take away, he would have to build where he is legally able to build per the survey.
Okay. All right, and would I need to get a survey as well also? It would serve me perhaps?
Might be a good idea, but we're not here to advise you on that.
Okay, all right. That's my only concern as far as him building multiple units there. I'm fine with that personally.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Okay, appellant can come back up.
I don't disagree with Mr. Moody that it is very inconvenient as the current lots have been built. However, we did buy a piece of property and those lines are established. We do have a survey if it's necessary for anybody, but I don't have much to add to it, but I do believe it. I don't disagree that it's an inconvenience, but I do believe that we're legally allowed to build there.
Do you know from your survey, or I guess it kind of looks like on parcel view, or it looks like these 4 lots that are kind of in a row there, those look like to be all the same size lots. They're all 50 by 150, 1.7 looks like. Is that about, along with what you know of the lots? I mean, I know you can't say probably for sure, but does that go along with what you know?
Yeah, they're all under 8,000.
So they're all under 8,000, okay.
I'll have to say I forgot to ask if anyone had a question for the opposition. Just wanted to make sure. No? Okay, thanks.
I saw in the packet you mentioned something about, so the Summit Street that we see on the screen here, that's a Metro right-of-way to build that street, is that correct? But it never was built, and then now you're building it, is that right?
Yes, that's all correct.
Okay. Have you, I saw some support and some opposition, or mostly opposition from a neighborhood group in the packet. They wrote a letter of opposition, but have you talked to your other neighbors around here? And that may be a better question for, I guess you both live in the area, so.
Yes, so I discussed the project directly with all the neighbors adjoining my Summit Street property, including Mr. Moody. And I also would like to point out that I was pretty disappointed to see the neighborhood group letter, as I reached out several times to try to get a meeting, and no one reached out to me to talk about it. And the way I see it is that I'm not sure that that letter accurately depicts the mindset of the current resident in our area. As I said, I live, you can see my lot at the very corner of this parcel viewer. And I think most people moving into this is our first home, and we're looking for something in an HPR because that's how you can minimize cost as far as buying a new house instead of having an entire lot and it being over an $800,000 house.
Okay.
I didn't see any specific concerns in the letter besides that they just didn't want it.
Okay, thanks.
Have you talked to the council member for this area?
It's kind of the same story. I've reached out 3 times and can't get a dialogue going.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, anything you'd like to add?
I would like to add that I was originally scheduled for 2 weeks ago, and I got a call from the BZA administrator saying that the councilwoman asked to delay the hearing so that I could talk to them, which I did. And again, I reached out several times after that and couldn't get anything.
Okay. Okay, if there's no further questions, we will close the public hearing. No, your time is over. Discussion?
I can say I'm a little conflicted because it is kind of close to that threshold that moves around a little bit, but it's clearly
And everyone has not adopted that threshold.
yeah. Well, my thought, we talk about survey errors and things like that, how things were built, and clearly what was built on this street is not what was on the survey. I mean, that's clear, and so it's I definitely hear the neighborhood opposition, and same thing would happen if it was in my neighborhood. I know because that's been happening recently, but I'm conflicted. I'll put it that way. It's not self-imposed because in some ways it's self-imposed because he's trying to build two on one lot, but it's also not self-imposed because that all the lots are pretty funky for how they've actually been built out over the years. And if it was a square lot, then he would likely, he very well could have the 8,000 feet. So I don't know. I'm interested to hear other thoughts.
So I actually am pretty consistent on how I look at these, and so there was nothing in the presentation that swayed me. I looked at this. I don't think 5.6% is a survey error. I think a survey error is anywhere between 1% to 3%. After that, the way that I look at it, I think all of those lots are like that. It's not like this. If this lot was just the only one like this on this particular block, then I could be like, well, this one is different, and then he does have a hardship because it's not consistent with everybody else. But he's pretty consistent with everybody else on his block face, and so from my perspective, he talks a lot about what he could do by right. So the other property that he owned by right, he could reestablish those lot lines. I have no objection. You're legally entitled to that. I don't think he's legally entitled to build 2 because he doesn't have the minimum amount of square footage, and without an exceptional condition, which I don't see, it's hard for me to support it. But I do understand the other side of the argument, and I understand Mr. Newton's perspective, and I think there's other smarter people than me on this board who would agree with you. So, those are my 2 cents.
this is one of those times, I'm not as conflicted on it because he can still build something there. He's making the choice to have 2 units. I mean, I hate to tell someone you can't do what you want to do on your own dirt. So in that respect, what he wants to do, he is imposing upon himself. I haven't heard anything, sort of, again, like Ashanti. Maybe this is what they train us to do in law school. I haven't heard anything that changes me this time, and I don't even have to get to asking my tree questions for a change. I mean, there's some beautiful trees there, but if you want to reopen it and he can come up and maybe reconvince, he hasn't moved the needle as to me, so I just don't see it as being something that I'd like to do this. I need your permission to let me do it. I want the extra cookie out of the cookie jar, even though I'll have a tummy ache after I have it, is what I'm getting in the feel I get. So I'll
offer my opinion as well. I do see in the neighborhood, other duplex lots. But you're right, on this particular block face, all the lots are pretty much the same, so this isn't really unique. And so I would not be inclined to support the request. So is there any more discussion, or do we want to make a motion?
Are you going to make me do it again?
I make a motion that we deny the variance as requested because a hardship was not shown.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Okay, so we have 4-0 for that motion, and I see none opposed, so that motion passes.
Next case is case 2021-116, located at 2314 Seafreed Street. Is there anyone here in opposition to case 2021-116? Seeing none, I'll present the slides, and then the appellant may come forward and state their case. Here's an overview of the parcel map showing their property, which is zoned RS5. This is an item A appeal challenging the zoning administrator's determination that the property is no longer a legal duplex lot. Aerial view of the surrounding areas. The existing conditions. And the street view in both directions. The appellant would go ahead and introduce yourself by name, address, and state your presentation at this point.
My name is Johnine Thomas. I live at 4217 Ashland City Highway, Nashville, Tennessee, 37218. Okay. My parents built the duplex in 1965, and it was for family and friends as we went to college. My sister lived there, and when she finished college in D.C., came to start a business, and so she lived there until she passed, and that was in 2013. I also have a neighbor who, the other tenant at 2314A, who has lived there for several years. She has said that apparently when it was rezoned to whatever it is, there was no notification given to anybody about a rezoning action being made. And my sister and I always thought that it was a duplex and would be operated as a duplex. When she passed in 2013, she had been ill for a long time, and my mother and I were partial caregivers. And then my mother became sick, and she died shortly thereafter. And I was my mother's primary caregiver. And after their passing, it just took a lot out of me, and I just couldn't do anything except put one foot in front of the other, and I did not try to prepare the unit for tenancy. And then when I did this year, I felt I was healed. I did do that, and I went to NES I mean, I noticed the meter was gone, but it never dawned on me that there was anything other than them doing due diligence to take care of their property. So when I went to get the meter reattached, they said that it was now a single-family dwelling and that it didn't need another meter. And so that's when this started. And that I went to Dan's family friend, and asked him about it, and he informed me that he remembered it being a blanket rezoning, and that people were not notified, and it was just something that was done. I'm asking for it to be reinstated. The zoning R6 be reinstated so that I can prepare the Unit B for my cousin to come live.
Sir, if you'd like to speak, could you state your name and address as well?
Your name and address.
If you would like to speak, would you state your name and address as well? I noticed you were speaking earlier.
Okay. My name is Dan Lane. I live at 3912 Drake Branch Road, and I'm the owner of ABL Realtor Services, practicing in the North Nashville area primarily for the past 32 years. And I have here showing, and I didn't pull them in time, but back in 2006 and 2007, for some reason, duplexes became a bad word. And I think it happened because of a couple of developers bought some acre lots out in the Green Hill area and built 2 units on it. And for some reason, nobody wanted 2 units on a lot anymore. And so as a result, for example, this is a petition that passed Ashton, the council in the 21st district, where she's located, to downzone the entire boundary of their neighborhood from R6 district to RS5. There was another ordinance passed, this one I think was in 2007, where 192 acres involving quite a few lots to downzone from R6 to RS5, not RM5, but RS5, residential single family. And then another one I was able to locate in 2007, March and April, another 44 acres of property in the area was downzoned from R6 to RM5. Now the lot is a 63 by 150 lot, built as a duplex, and if you look at any of the documents on the record, it would show it was always as a duplex, built as a duplex, and also if you look direct west across 24th, I think, across Seafreed, but facing 24th, is a fourplex there that we manage, so that having one other tenant come there is not going to have no negative impact or effect in this community. Now, one other final thing, I served on the mayor's affordable task force, and one of the things was very, very pronounced and we was concerned about is how do we retain affordable units in the community, whereas in this case you got a unit, 2-bedroom unit leasing for $750, $800, and the new ones are being built running for $1,400, $1,500.
Sir, we ran out of time. Sorry, but
okay.
Thank you for sharing with us. And I'm going to ask if there are any questions, because that'll generate some more conversation.
This is for the applicant. So you're just trying to use what you have as a duplex again. You're not trying to tear it down and build 2 houses or do anything crazy like that. Okay. Just want to use it as a duplex. It's built as a duplex. You want to use it as a duplex.
Right. We really just want to get yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions?
My question is actually for the staff. So if we reinstated the duplex, is there a way that we could limit it to this owner? Because we can't change the zoning. Like, she asked us to change the zoning. We can't do that. That's not what we do. So we're just trying to find out whether or not the ZA erred in denying it. And this is operated for a duplex, it looks like, for a long time. It was built as one, and then the zoning changed and they didn't know it. So I guess that's my question.
I believe that would be a question for Metro Legal to confirm.
Oh, I'm sorry, legal counsel.
Could I respond to that?
Well, I'm just asking the staff, like, if we could limit it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're out of time, but if we ask you another question, feel free to answer it.
That would be something that I would have to do a little bit more research on as to whether or not you could actually limit it to the person specifically, but I'm happy to do that and get that to the board as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Okay.
So if I understand the thrust of it, where you're wondering if we can limit any basically target, if we were to agree to it or not agree to it, to this one particular owner and dwelling.
Right,
Okay.
because it sounds like, just based off the history of it, this has been in their family for a really long time. This is how they operated it. They had some deaths, the zoning changed without them being aware, so now they can't do it. And she's not trying to change anything really, so that's why I was wondering. I was trying to mitigate I was trying to find a compromise between what the DA did and what they're asking. That was it.
I have a question for staff. How long ago did the zoning administrator say, and which zoning administrator might it have been?
It would be Joey Hargis. I believe I actually reviewed these records also. The meter was turned off in January 2014. The zoning change took place in January 1998.
So are we in discussion right now? Is that what?
We did not close the public.
We haven't closed
Yes,
public.
we are in discussion. Okay. When the time ran out, it got a little confusing.
Madam Chair, you're doing a great job today.
I'm trying. So is there any discussion? I think we didn't have any additional questions for them, although I have one, so we will not close yet. That's what I was waiting to ask this question. Would you be, as noted, Metro Legal, our representative, wanted to do some more research. Would you be willing to defer this case to the next meeting to give time to have that research done?
That means I have to come back down?
No.
Yes,
I mean, if they defer it, then I have to come back down for the next meeting.
that's correct.
And what would that be?
September 16th.
I've got to check my calendar, see what's doing at work.
Okay.
In the afternoon, this time?
Same time.
September 6th.
I think, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay,
That would be okay?
yeah.
Okay, we wanted your thoughts on that before we closed the public hearing and took a vote on the case, unless there are any more questions for you. Go ahead.
So is the last time someone lived there was when your sister and your mother were alive? So was that like 2014, 2015?
Last time, 214.
Okay, that was my question. Okay, thank you.
If I could request, if we do defer it, I realize I'm jumping ahead, we could put this as maybe the first item on the agenda. I'm going to make a motion that we defer for one meeting.
I'll close the public hearing first, and then we'll do your motion.
I'm trying to jump out there.
Before we have Tom's motion, I don't know if other people are actually feeling that way, so it may not even be worthwhile to defer if you all think my line of thinking is off.
Is the public hearing closed now?
Yeah, the public hearing is closed.
Yeah, so I mean, I look at this and this looks like a duplex, smells like a duplex. It's a duplex at the end of the day. I mean, it was the original owners who built the dang duplex there in 1960s, looks like. I mean, this is a duplex, and I would not want to. I know that they're operating it as they're wanting to operate as a duplex now, which they have for the last 60 years, with the exception of the last 5. And there are some extraneous circumstances there But this is, you know, this is a family property, and I would hesitate to limit it to just one family, because at the end of the day, there may be a day that they don't own it, and that would limit, I mean, honestly, that limits the value of the property for the next for the next person. If they did want to sell it, that's limiting their property value. You know, I would be more inclined to approve it as it is, because I mean, it is a duplex. It has not been operated as anything but a duplex. If they had used it as only a single family dwelling for the past 7 years, that's one thing, but it just hasn't been used as anything for the past 7 years. And just because they didn't have people in there because they didn't want to go through the process of finding tenants over the last 7 years, I don't think they should lose that designation. And, you know, frankly, that takes away their rights and their property for that.
No, I don't have anything. Go ahead.
Probably better, since we only have 4 members here, to defer it, because although I appreciate what you're saying, right now I'm a no vote. So, and that's to help you, believe it or not, because I'll be diluted very, very quickly, and something may come to mind next time, because I truly want you to do. I mean, Mr. Newton spouted a line I usually say, so I'm, without objection, can I make a motion, Madam Chair?
You can, and then we can discuss if we need to afterwards.
Make a motion that we defer this matter to our next meeting, with it being the first item to be brought up.
There's a motion and a second. Or any discussion?
I was just going to say that Mr. Newton convinced me, so I was going to change it to a yes vote, but it doesn't have enough votes. So I was just going to say that Mr. Newton convinced me, and I was going to go with it.
Yeah, and I just want for the applicants to know, you have to have 4 affirmative votes to get anything. If you have 1 no vote, then that is not good for you. So we may have an opportunity, there may be an opportunity at the next, when there's 7 people, they get the 4 votes without maybe one of the people voting for it. I'm just saying, just want you to be aware so that,
Okay, so right now it only have 3 votes, is that correct?
Right.
Well, I think you only have 2 right now.
We'll have to, we'll have to really formalize the vote.
Right, we haven't voted yet, but yeah.
Okay, so there was a motion and a second, and is there any more discussion? Okay, so all in favor of that say aye and raise your hand. Okay, so it's 4-0 to defer until the next meeting, first on the docket.
Okay. Will I need to present, well, I know I need to be here, but will I need to present anything?
You will need to present the same case again. For the board members that are absent today will need to see it.
If you would
Or
like
they
to
can-
have someone else represent you, you may.
Okay.
If that works better for
I mean,
you.
because I can't, work is work, and if something,
Time up here, you'll get kind of used to seeing us. You'll do much used.
thank you, but I'm saying work is work, and I work at Meharry, and if something comes up and I've got to be there, I've got to be there.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you let the staff know, they'll accommodate you as best they can.
Okay, but I would not want it deferred again because I'm not here, is what I'm saying. Okay.
The folks over there have all the power.
So we are adjourned. Motion to adjourn.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.org.